Good morning and half a day. Thank you everyone for being here with us this beautiful Friday morning. It's Valentine Eve. Happy Valentine's to everybody. Today's date is February 13, 2026. This morning's oversight hearing held by the Committee on Transportation, Tourism, Customs, Utilities, Federal and Foreign Affairs is hereby called to order. It is 9:01 a.m. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping matters that we can get right to work. The first notice for this oversight hearing was disseminated to all senators and media outlets on February 6, 2026. The second notice was disseminated on February 11, 2026. These hearing notices, accompanied by an agenda, were also made available to local media, the Guam Legislature website, our legislative calendar, and the Government of Guam's public notice portal. It will also be appended to the committee report along with any testimony and presentation provided. Participation in oversight hearings will be limited to representatives from the relevant government agencies. However, members of the public are welcome to attend. In compliance with Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, all government activities, programs, and services are accessible to individuals with disabilities. If you or anyone you know requires assistance or special accommodations to participate in the hearing, please contact my office via email at senator.lujan@guamlegislature.gov or by phone at 671-969-6525. Today's hearing is being broadcast live on local television, GTA Channel 21, Docomo Channel 111, and streamed online through the Institute and Guahan's YouTube channel at Guam Legislature Media. A script will be filed with the Committee on Rules and made available to the public. Today, our committee will hear from the Port Authority of Guam. At this time, I would like to recognize, no, nobody's here yet. They're still partying, I think, from last night. But I'm sure they'll come in, yeah. Before I proceed, I would like to remind everyone in attendance again of the Institute and Guahan's General Rules of Conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chairperson before speaking and shall state their full name and title for the record. Questions and testimony must remain confined to the substance or nature of today's agenda. Personal inferences to the character or motive of any senator or testifier are not permitted. Pursuant to Section 1107 of the 38th Guam Legislature Standing Rules, the chairperson may order the removal from this hearing room any person who fails to observe proper decorum. Any violation of this rule will result in the immediate removal from the public hearing room. Before we called witness forward, I want to set the stage again for today's oversight hearing. The Port Authority of Guam is not just a facility, it's a lifeline. Nearly everything our families consume and nearly every business relies on what comes through this port. When the port is efficient, Guam's cost of living goes down, shelves stay stocked, and businesses can plan. When the port is congested or unreliable, everybody pays for it through delays and detention, higher operating costs, and ultimately higher prices. Today's hearing is about performance, priorities, and accountability. While the Port Authority is an autonomous agency, self-sustaining agency that operates primarily on user fees rather than legislative appropriations, the expectations of the people of Guam are the same. Results that are measurable, transparent, and improving over time. As performance-based budgeting rolls out more broadly across government, this hearing is intended to ensure the Port Authority is prepared to speak in that same language by establishing clear benchmarks, tracking outcomes, and demonstrating in concrete terms what the public receives in return for the fees it pays. In terms of objectives and scope, this hearing will cover operations and service delivery, capacity, equipment readiness, throughput, bottlenecks, and safety. 2, financial conditions and controls, cash positions, revenues, expenses, debts, payables, procurement, and discipline. 3, capital modernization and execution, priority projects, timelines, funding strategies, and major risk. 4, stakeholder impacts and coordination, shipping lines, importers, truckers, labor, cost and delay drivers. 5, federal and interagency coordination, which is in grants, compliance, reporting, joint processes, and customs and other agencies. And 6, performance metrics and PBB readiness and KPIs, baseline targets, outcomes reporting for budgeting, cadence for budgeting. We're here for frank, solutions-oriented discussions. We'll be asking for specifics, current conditions, measurable targets, timelines, and documentation that support what is stated on the record. At this time, I would like to call the manager of the Port Authority of Guam and any of his team members who wish to present alongside you. Senator Rory and whoever else, yeah. I'd like to welcome also the Vice Chair of my committee, of course, Senator Chris Duenas. Thank you, Senator Chris, for joining us here. Before we begin, I'd like to call the Sergeant-at-Arms to please swear in all those who will be testifying on behalf of the Port Authority of Guam.
If you can please stand and raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. Mr. Chair, Dr. Rose, you may proceed.
Thank you, Sarge. Senator Respicio, please again introduce yourself and your team for the record, and you may proceed with your presentation. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and to your Vice Chair, Senator Duenas. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you, our Oversight Legislative Committee. I'd like to first recognize our board member, Mr. Mark Mendiola. Our chairperson is a little bit under the weather, and our other two board members, Vice Chair Conchita Taitino and Faye Ovales there. They're also probably monitoring this hearing via Zoom if they're not on their way already. And with me at the table are various division heads that would each take a turn in the presentation. And the room is made up of all the other division heads. While I didn't make their attendance here mandatory, we encourage their participation. That's why you have a room full of division heads, and we're all prepared to answer any specific questions you may have. But based on the agenda you presented to us, we took the liberty of putting together a very brief PowerPoint presentation, and if we could ask your IT to pull it up on screen. And if we go to the first slide, in response to your outline, why the port matters. As you said, Mr. Chairman, in your opening, Guam's only commercial seaport. We handle over 90% of all goods coming into the island. We're critical to not only our island, but our region. There is a direct link to cost of living, food security, fuel, and national defense, and we are a 24/7 operation with no alternative facility. Next slide. When we came in 2019, one of the first things you'll see that we did in the 2018 transition report is we recognized the need to update the master plan. And in updating the master plan, we took a look at some of the areas of concern that we needed to pay attention to. And from 2019, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, to 2026, you'll see our strategic evolution. And we also provide this brochure for the committee. It's something that we have been doing since 2024 based on our Master Plan 2023. The tenets of it. And so in 2019, we focused on stabilization and reset. In 2020, we addressed crisis management and continuity, and obviously that's the year of the pandemic. 2021, we emphasized on recovery and structural correction. 2022, we focused on rebuilding capacity and restoring confidence. 2023 was a period of strategic alignment and readiness, building on reforms in prior years. And in 2023 was when, as an agency, we started to pivot to take a look at the port's responsibility, not only in terms of commerce, but also national security, national defense. And that's the whole crux of our presentation, our Master Plan 2023, which you'll see come down before the legislature in our Master Plan 2025. In 2024, we focused on recovery, alignment, and framework development amid external pressures, including military buildup, pandemic after effects, and Typhoon Mawar. And all of these, by the way, senators, were directives that were issued by our board. They were adopted by resolutions based on the document contained in that master plan. And in 2025, we focused on institutionalizing reforms, reinforcing financial discipline, strengthening compliance systems, and preparing for execution. In our next slide, which brings us to 2026, when we brought the look ahead initiatives to the board wanted us to institutionalize all of these reforms to basically make it so that the institution endures individuals and to look at board policies, to look at GM policies, and to make 2026 basically a year of continued execution, to transition from recovery to sustained delivery, to modernize infrastructure while protecting operations. And perfect example here, Mr. Chairman, is the legislation that you sponsored, the dollar-for-dollar lease credit offset. And we invite you to come to the port to see what Black Construction was able to do in just 8 months. The commercial buildings that they built, in a couple months, hopefully you'll see a paved road to Family Beach to include bathroom and restroom facilities. They've totally transformed H-Wharf, Hotel Wharf. And when we went to the blessing for these areas, you know, I told Black Construction, from the government's perspective, with all the money in the world, we probably could not have done what Black was able to do in 8 months because of our procurement, processes, and to no fault of our own or just the challenges. But they have just been able to transform. If you go to the Old Hawaiian Rock site, which now the board passed a resolution to say rightfully that should be called the Black Construction site. Traditionally and historically, that's been a dumping ground for scrap metal, abandoned vehicles. You go there and it's just really transformed, right? And
Can we arrange for the committee to visit the site? I mean, is it safe for
yeah,
us?
absolutely.
Okay.
To include going on site with the glass breakwater, and they'll update you with the what that construction looks like. And then in addition to modernizing these infrastructures, we're strengthening Guam's economic and national security readiness. And so for our next slide, we want to point out what success looks like. And the success of the port looks like delivery without disruption. We're maintaining uninterrupted cargo and passenger operations, control operational risk during accelerated construction. We're keeping the supply chain moving while projects advance. And our next slide, in our 2026 execution priorities, the priority continues to be trying to find a way to replace the 3 42-year-old gantry cranes. And so we submitted a grant for the 3rd year in a row to MARAD. For the first 2 years, the biggest impediment was the Buy American requirement. We were able, through the governor's lobbying, through the lieutenant governor's lobbying, through your lobbying as well, Mr. Chairman, through the congressman's lobbying, MARAD was able to waive the Buy American requirement for SDS gantry cranes for Pacific ports. And so we're thinking that what's different this time around in our grant application is that this time around there's no Buy American requirement, but they do, in parentheses, they describe except for China-made cranes, but they don't come out and say it, but that's what how they describe it, right? So we would know by the end of they're saying end of January, but with the government shutdown back in last fall, we probably would know maybe this month or early next month whether or not that grant was approved.
Would you consider a public-private partnership with the crane building and all that? Because I know a couple months back we got a visit from a company that has access to be able to say, man, we can build it. Gosh, I forget the timeline was a lot shorter than the initial ordering from all that and they would maintain it and things of that nature. So just wondering if the port management and board will consider a public-private
Yeah,
partnership.
and we'll need the legislature's
Sure.
assistance in making sure that the statute conforms
sure,
to
sure.
that kind of relationship. But
Yeah.
if we don't get the merit grant, we're going to have to consider what we're going to need to do to raise the capital and however that mechanism looks like. We're also looking at the field resilience, WARF F2 to F6. The port received a $21 million raise grant to rehabilitate WARFs F2 to F6 for structural hardening. And also we're in the process of preparing the procurement for a new terminal operating system and cybersecurity upgrades. And on our next slide, the port maintains a foundation of financial discipline, clean audits. For the last 7 years, we've had clean audits. We're making sure that we meet our debt service ratio protection. We've instituted some internal budget controls. Our workforce continuity, succession planning, cross-training, safety readiness. You know, in the area of succession planning, something as simple as what to do with crane operators. When I participated in the transition report for 2018, one of the biggest challenges that the port was facing was there were 4 crane operators that were going to retire. And there was no program in place to how those crane operators were going to be filled. So when we came in, it was an idea actually that our operations manager now was pushing. We instituted in-house training. We have all those employees who have OJT for crane operator certifications, entire program that's being run through the transportation. Now I think we're probably, I want to say 21, 22 employees deep that are able to operate a gantry crane in addition to all the other equipment at the port. And since 2019, we've been able to replace, as employees retire and move on, we've been able to hire crane operators in-house. And so you'll see that. And then most recently, the other concern we had was that there was no succession planning from bottom up, including the division head. So the board passed a resolution, I believe 2 fiscal years ago, where we merged like CIP engineering divisions together. This succession plan, we've actually quantified a savings of about $700,000 in cost avoidance, where we took the equipment maintenance division, facilities was under that division. We've elevated the facilities so that that could be a division all on its own. You know, throughout time, we've seen that the building maintenance, and Alex is here today. Back then, building maintenance was, not that it's not important, it's always important. It was custodial work, but now if you look at our facilities maintenance department, there's painters, there's plumbers, there's HVAC, there's electricians, there's really skilled certificated employees, and so it only made sense to elevate that division and have that division head be treated as a manager, and then have those employees work closely with CIP engineering so they can understand and participate and give their input in the capital improvement CIPs and all the other. So those are just some examples, and you can see all of these things are being done through board resolution and how everybody is has that they have their place. And so we've also instituted cross-training, safety readiness, governance system, compliance, documentation that outlasts individuals. In our next slide, this is the thing that I think we're most, that kind of tells our financial story. When the port went out to get the 2018 revenue bond, it committed to a $4.8 million monthly allotment. So 8 years later, guess what our monthly allotment is? 4.8 million. You know, so I present this to our industry partners, I presented this to the Chamber of Commerce, I presented this to other companies. What company can say that in an entire 8 years, their monthly allotment remained the same, and yet we're thriving, right? And so we have the same monthly allotment of $4.8 million. Our workforce stability, here's where people always look at, and these numbers were verified through audits. They're in our citizen-centric report. You could see that there's no real surge in hiring. we're disciplined in our hiring. And we could talk more in detail on how we go about those disciplines. And so in our next slide, we continue to say, because it wasn't an easy feat, but the men and women at the port, we were able to accomplish being 100% operational during COVID. And also with Typhoon Mawar, we reopened in just 3 days, despite the extensive damage given to us. And over the last decade, the port was able to receive and execute $106.5 million in federal grants. And even though our budget requirements exceeded $4.8 million, right, we stayed within that monthly allotment. And this monthly allotment included capital purchases, included equipment. It's everything the port's supposed to use to operate. But then we're able to supplement that with how aggressive we've been with our planning division and going after our federal grants. And then no tariff increases have ever been tied to grants. And so, yeah, I reserve the remainder of my time to introduce Tony Guittard to go over the matrix for operations, because you asked about bottlenecks, productivity, and Tony, thank you.
Yeah, my name is Anthony Attar, and I'm Planner 4 for the Operations Department. And again, I'm here to speak on behalf of the charts about to be presented. Next. The first chart pertains to the port's operations productivity. The metric provided is net moves per hour. Calculation is total lifts divided by operational hours, less delays, which is usually meal periods and shift changes, but other non-operational activity is included. Since 2017, the port's productivity has increased. More importantly, this increased productivity has sustained for the last few years. And as you can see from the chart, you know, for instance, Manson's net moves per hour in 2018 was at 21. Last year was at 32. APL was at 17. Last year again was at 25, and so forth. Next slide. The next chart is cargo vessel berth hours. This chart represents the average hours carrier's vessel remains at dock. Calculation for this metric is the duration between the first mooring line attached to the port's pier upon arrival and the last mooring line released at departure. Again, this chart indicates shorter stays over the years for each of the carriers, except perhaps mail lines. But as shown in the previous chart, the longer stay did not affect vessel productivity. Next slide. And then just to elaborate a bit on my last comment, this report here is last week's vessel operation productivity report. Last week we had the port worked on 6 vessels, and if you notice you have a window allotment. Window allotments were given for the Matson mother vessel as well as APL's main vessel, and here's the difference when I was talking about earlier, where berth hours, and that doesn't necessarily mean a bad operation or anything. For instance, the Matson lure line. It shows that the operational activity was at 18.2 and berth hours were at 25.4. So essentially the difference between the berth hours and the operation hours is simply put, it's like the berth hours is your first line to last line, and your operational hours is your first lift to last lift. Next slide.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Morning, Senators. My name is Shine Augustine. I'm the Assistant Equipment Maintenance Manager. First, before I start, if I could, I'd like to say thank you to the men and women of the EQMR division. Without them, anything that we're reading off right now would not be possible at all. So with that said, coming in, we wanted to set some kind of streamlined process over at EQMR. So what we did initially was started combining every regulatory publication out there for the vehicles and equipment and gantry cranes. So we put that all together and we created a policy that our men and women are actually able to just focus on that instead of try to search for that everywhere on OSHA and everywhere else. With that, after that, we started streamlining maintenance language, would then allow us to get better data out of the end of the year when everything is saying the same thing. We were able to pull more data and get everything to see what we spent on. From there, we started changing everything as far as our processes. So we wanted to transition from personality-dependent practice to written process-driven procedures and flowcharts. With that being done, we were actually able to coordinate with finance, procurement, and with IT department to start launching our work order cost efficiency and work order financial accuracy. What that allowed us to do with our cost efficiency was start to see the relationship between labor, material, and other expenditures. And with our financial accuracy, we were actually able to see work orders capture true labor and materials versus projected. So from there, we actually started moving to a system that is now tracking where our planned maintenance, also known as scheduled maintenance, is digitized, and we're able to pull that without having to manually track everything, and it holds us accountable for that. And next slide. So what you see up there is our equipment maintenance dashboard. Sorry, 1 second. So this dashboard actually provides the end users and transparency to everybody so that they can see what is going on with their vehicles and equipment and how long it's been down and why it's been down. This also provides EQMR management and supervisors KPIs that can keep them aware of what the situation is and without having to have a manual count. So we actually are using VEUs right now, which translate into the size of a vehicle versus the actual size of it. So like a gantry crane would be like 150 VEUs, and that would equivalent one small vehicle versus a gantry crane. So that's how we try to track that, and it helps us with manpower and funding and everything else. So also, if you can see up there, there's also a mission capable rate, which actually gives upper management a snapshot of the fleet's health and status on our overall equipment. We also have on there for our supervisors to see, it's also the middle rows on the bottom there, it's actually an induction versus production. So this shows how much work came in and how much work went out every day. And also the biggest thing on there is also our MELs, which is our minimum essential level. This provides the supervisors an immediate response to priority shifting. So if the number would go down and start turning yellow or red, that lets the supervisors know we need to shift priority without having to be informed that we need to start shifting. And that's all I got, Senator. Next slide.
Good morning, Senator. My name is Jojo Guevara. I am the Chief Financial Officer for the port. So normally, one of the things that was asked by the committee is on revenues and expenses. So our revenues is normally driven by our containers and our non-containerized cargo. So we constantly track that every month to see how we're doing, and it translates to our revenues, right? So as you can see, from our fiscal year 2019 to fiscal year 2025, we are averaging at around 85,000 containers. And these are the containers, these are the statistics that we normally provide our rating agencies to see that how stabilized the port is. You know, although there are some decreases in the transshipment in certain years, we were able to recover in the local containers, right? The most important thing for us is to have a stabilized local containers. That's basically where the revenue is from. So there is a slight decrease in the fiscal year 2025 to around 83,574 containers. We foresee that fiscal year 2026 is going to be a rebound based on the military awards that we got, and at the same time, hopefully the tourism will increase as compared to this year, as compared to fiscal year 2026, right? So that's the container history from fiscal year 2019 to 2025. Next is our non-containerized cargo, which we also call our break bulk. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. Next is our non-containerized, or we call them break bulk cargoes, right? This is important because this is where the construction materials are. The steels, the sand, the rebars, those are all non-containerized cargoes. And the gray portion of the bar chart normally represents the the foreign vessels. So normally coming from Asia, those are all where construction materials are coming from. And then the blue represents the domestic, any non-containerized cargo that is coming from the U.S. mainland, right? So there was an increase in fiscal year 2023 because there was an award of military construction in fiscal year 2022. So therefore, the materials arrived fiscal year 2023. It's starting to decrease in FY24 and 25, but still, if you notice, it's still almost the same, right? That means our blue part of the bar has been increasing. The reason why is Matson has been bringing two conroe, what we call a conroe vessel, meaning it's a combination of container and ro-ro vessel, right? So it increased, although break bulk wise or non-container wise, it increased. Revenue wise, it's not really, we prefer more construction materials because that's more revenue for us, right? But ro-ro vessels, as you know, it's just like a fixed type of rate that we're receiving. Again, we are foreseeing an increase of break bulk construction materials in fiscal year 2026 and 2027 because there was an award, as announced by the military, there's going to be constructions that were awarded in 25, and the materials are starting to be brought in fiscal year 2026 and 2027, right? So those are good signs for both container and non-containerized cargo. Next slide. So you ask us about the history of the port as far as our revenues and our expenses is concerned. The blue bar represents our revenues, right? We've been averaging ranging from 54 million. We were at peak of 60.6 million, and then for fiscal year 2025, we ended at 57.7 million as far as revenue is concerned. On the expense side, we were ranging between 50 million to 55 million as far as the operating expense is concerned. As you've heard from previous presentations, we ended our fiscal year 2018 at a negative 104,000, but we were able to rebound after that in FY19 to 2.8 million or almost 3 million in net income, 600,000 in fiscal year 2020, 1 million in 2021. I'm sorry, a loss of 2.2 million in 21. As you notice, it was the pandemic. During the pandemic, revenue-wise, the cargo was down as compared to previous, right? But after that, we were able to maintain it at 12.6, 4.6, and 4 million as of when we ended fiscal year 2025, right? This is some of the reason for ending on a positive is because we received federal reimbursement. You heard that we received several federal reimbursement, 15 million in 2023 on the ARP money that we received from the governor. We received 5 million last year for insurance reimbursement on the Typhoon Mawar. So those are the things that kind of like are helping us out. Although sometimes the operating expense is lower, higher than the operating revenue, it's because of the non-operating, which is the federal grants, the insurance reimbursement that basically help us out to end up on a positive. So that's the story as far as our income statement for the past 7 years. Next slide, please. So the general manager talked about the debt service coverage ratio, right? As you know, in 2018, we borrowed 76 million. And part of the indenture requirement is for us to have a 1.25 ratio, right? Net, the revenue available for debt service divided by our debt should give us at least a 1.25. So if you see that the trend of it, we were able to meet a good amount in the first few years, 5.11, 2.29. The reason being is the principal and interest during that time was still low, 2 million, 3 million on the first one. Now, for the past 6-7 years, we are now paying 5.7 million. So that means when we're working on our budget, we need to make sure that we have a net revenue available for debt service of at least 1.25. So far, starting 21 to 25, we've been higher than the 1.25, 1.35 in 2021, 3.66 in 2022, 2.29 in 2023, 1.93. It was a very challenging year for last year, 2025. The reason being is, as we mentioned, there was lower type of cargoes that came in 2025, lower domestic containers, lower break bulk. So we're hoping it's a rebound in 2026. That's the reason why we did a cash defeasance for fiscal year 2025, meaning we paid off our principal and our interest ahead of time to reduce our principal and interest. Because of that, we were able to pass the debt service revenue.
Jojo, what did you attribute the lower rate coming in to?
It was just because of, I'm assuming the economy is not good that year. Tourism was down, and then, I would notice even myself, there are very few tourists in the hotels, and there are very, so I'm, it's based on consumption,
So
right?
good. Okay.
So containers are based on what's being consumed.
That's not considering the construction materials and all that, right? That's just something.
No, those are basically things that are in the containers. Most of the things are inside the container.
Got it. Yeah.
So it was a challenge for us, fiscal year 2025. We were able to resolve the issue. I think the best thing is every month that we have a meeting with the board, we present to them our financial status, right? So we're able to strategize on how are we going to resolve this issue by the end of the fiscal year. The GM is mentioning that the debt service coverage ratio is very important for us. That's the reason why every month we provide the board a status of our DSCR. So for the past 5 years, senators, besides passing the 1.25, again, as I mentioned, we go through a review by the rating agencies, both S&P and Moody's. So we have maintained the rating of A as far as S&P is concerned, which is investment grade, and then for Moody's we have maintained Baa2, which is also an investment grade, right, and a stable outlook for both of them, right? So because of the financials, the cargo statistics that I just showed, those are the basis for them to how are they going to rate us each year. So that's the status, senators, for our financials. I'll just pass it on to our CIP manager for CIPs. Next slide.
Good morning, Senators.
Morning.
My name is Clarence Laguteng, CIP and Engineering Manager at the Port. Currently, we have ongoing projects we're executing about $14 million worth of projects that are both have a mix of federal grants and local bonds. And previously, we've completed about about almost $60 million worth of project between 2018 to 2025. And one of that major accomplishment was the rehabilitation and repair of EQMR and repair of our wharf. So if you go to the port, you see that it's not just the painting that we're doing, it's the structural repairs that have been not done in the previous year. So we're trying to maintain the structural integrity of the building so we could further the use until we have proper funding in the future. Right now, if in our master plan, we have planned projects of about 496 million, and out of this 496, some of the projects there are of immediate need, like the GM has mentioned, the cranes, the replacement of our gantry cranes, the repair of our fuel piers, and structural repair of our wharves. So those are the immediate needs that we see between now and in the future, or immediate future.
Do you have any CIPs for either the Ag and Marina or the boat basin? Do you have?
Yes, we do. We currently received an award, and I think Ms. Donna here from Planning could talk further about that. But we received our share from Department of Agriculture for the replacement of Dock A at Agana Marina. We're also had a meeting last month with Army Corps for the dredging at the Agate Marina, and we have planned right now projects to install solar lights at Agate Marina. We've already finished Agana Marina for solar lighting.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things going on at our marinas that our users will really benefit from.
Okay.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So let's done.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Donna Acosta, and I'm a planner at the Port Authority. So with regard to federal and interagency coordination as it relates to grant awards that the Port has received, since 2019, the Port has received more than $64 million in federal grants. These include awards from the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, DoD, DOT's MARAD administration, US EPA, NOAA with the Marine Debris Removal Program, US EDA, Economic Development Administration, the Department of the Interior, Office of Insular Affairs, Fish and Wildlife Services. We've also received funding from Department of Homeland Security, FEMA. Depending on the grant, there is a required cost share, different percentages, and as Clarence has mentioned, with federal funded projects, there comes compliance and timing restraints. That's why we work actively in coordination with our federal grantors and/or the local agency for which we are a subrecipient. The grant that you asked about, we are a subrecipient to the Department of Agriculture for those marina grants. On the programmatic level, planners at the Port meet routinely with our federal counterparts, and we want to ensure grant compliance and that reports are submitted timely. Again, depending on the grant, report requirements are either semi-annual or quarterly, and as direct recipients, we're reporting directly to the grantor, or as subrecipients, we report to the local agency.
How successful are we with the grants that we receive, where there's a cost share? With that, how successful are we to be able to move on with those projects with the cost sharing measures?
So absolutely, before the grant application is submitted, we do need to get certification from our CFO that we will be able to meet the match.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Because I just, I mean, it's great to have the grants, but then, we have the cost share, and it's, oh man, we lost it because we couldn't, put in, our share of that. So we've had, you say maybe 100% success rate in in our grant applications and the cost share measures that we've had put in?
Yes.
Okay.
There have
We
been
need to
times.
clone this agency then.
And, and Mr. Chairman, one of the reasons why we happily participate in these grants because it's better to pay 20% than 100% of something that we would have otherwise been obligated for.
And that's, again, you
and-
know, I mean, wow, it's
Yeah.
it's a relief to hear things like that because I mean, you know, we hear at times that we've lost that opportunity, you know, so it's great. So yeah, it'd be you guys will be in line for cloning here soon. So yeah.
Okay. We do acknowledge, though, that sometimes there are process challenges with our federal grantors, one of which could be a system delay. We experienced with the shutdown, the FEMA Go system was down for a while, so that may result in delays. Additionally, as a subrecipient, we have experienced delays in reimbursement payments. We work closely with those recipients in trying to rectify it.
Well, let me ask this again with FEMA, because I know on the federal side, there's some challenges on FEMA. So what challenges are you anticipating or you seeing from the FEMA side of the house?
So we receive, under the FEMA program, we receive funding through the Port Security Grant Program.
Okay.
I wouldn't say we've had any challenges in reimbursement because our financial Affairs Office handles that. They do a direct drawdown from the FEMA PARS system. But with the other FEMA program, let's say public assistance or Homeland Security, where we are subrecipient to Guam Homeland, there's, of course, that extra step, and then it involves DOA processing that reimbursement. So in that regard, I would say that's
there are not
where
any
the
red
delays.
flags yet regarding the FEMA side of the house? No red flags at this point?
No, it's just a challenge. It's just a challenge collecting the share, but
How big of a challenge is that, Jojo?
it's a little bit when the AR is already aging from 60 to 90 days. Sometimes that's a challenge that we have, and we really need our resources to constantly push for it to be able to let them know exactly what the justification is, and if there's any missing documents that they're asking for, then we try to provide to the best ability. Right?
Yeah, and you know, my concern, and the committee's concern here is that, you know, when things are put out there and cuts are made, it's done with a broad stroke, right? And a lot of times I mean, you know, we need to be carved out in some of these issues that may be a challenge in other jurisdictions. So I just want to make sure that, you know, again, with this broad stroke that we're not lumped into the challenges that other jurisdictions may have, and that again, the unintended consequences that, you know, of our Port Authority. Yeah. So anyway, okay. Yeah.
So we do, there continue to be ongoing efforts to improve that information flow. Internally we work very closely with planning and procurement and finance in executing these programs. So we continuously work to improve that flow, as well as, again, the regular check-ins with our federal counterparts. Next slide. These are just a few photos highlighting some of the federally funded projects that we've been awarded. The first photo there is an award from NOAA, which we received funding to remove 13 abandoned or sunken vessels located throughout various port properties, including the Agate Marina, the Harbor of Refuge, Seaplane Ramp, and F1. The second photo there is the F1 Pier restoration, and that was just fairly recent. In September 25, we were awarded this grant from DoD's Community Infrastructure Program, Defense Community Infrastructure Program, and this is to restore the pier, urgent structural and safety upgrades. The third photo there is the service life extension of F2 to F6. This is a RAISE grant, a MARAD RAISE grant for critical repairs to F2 to F6. And the last photo there is Agate Marina Dock A repair. This would completely demolish and have a design build to an aluminum grade dock system, marine grade aluminum dock system. All of these projects, though, are currently either undergoing environmental compliance or NEPA with the federal grantor. Next slide. These are some of the federally funded equipment that we were able to obtain. These are photos from the MARAD Highway, American Marine Highway Program. It includes forklifts, top loaders, side loaders, boom lift, mobile reefer generators, and this has been instrumental in upgrading the port's operations. In addition to this, we've also received funding from the Port Security Grant for CCTV replacement and access control throughout the port, as well as Tier 4 tractors through EPA's Diesel Emission Reduction Act, DARA grant, and these tractors replace older, higher emission diesel units in the port's fleet. Again, these are just a few photos of some of the projects highlighting what we've received. Next slide.
Yeah. And so we just have a couple more items to report in the area of procurement. You've asked us about our procurement. As you know, the port has our delegation of procurement authority given to me as general manager. We didn't have that for 14 years, and early on we were able to reclaim that. And so for the current fiscal year, we have 301 open requisitions for small purchases, IFBs, RFPs, and the procurement team closed 253 to purchase orders. So this is an 84% success rate for FY26 to date. And there are ongoing invitation for bids and also ongoing RFPs. In the areas of hiring and active recruitments for FY26, we've recently hired 6 equipment operator 2s, 4 port terminal worker casuals, 1 automotive mechanic 1, and 6 security armed guards. And we also have various active job announcements ranging from administrative assistant for one position. We did try to recruit for a heavy mechanic too, but no applications were received. And then we still have some ongoing port terminal worker casuals and in-house stevedore leader and stevedore supervisor ones that we are recruiting for. And we also, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and Senator Gumatauta, what we also provide our board, we have a mid-year management performance assessment and a annual management performance assessment. And in this case, we submitted a memo to the board dated November 19, 2025. I would enter this into the record, but it's actually 37 pages of what each division will submit to me as some of their hot button items. We would review it with the deputy general managers. We would give comment to each division and then present that to the board. And so you could just have an idea of how communicative we are at all levels of the organization. And so in the following slides, the port just celebrated our 50th year anniversary, recognizing all the port employees for the last 5 decades. And we maintain that the foundation is in place for stronger systems, stronger discipline, and stronger governance. And our focus has always been on execution that ensures that the institution endures individuals. And so in the next slide, we are keeping Guam's supply chain moving every day without interruption. And this also includes the strong relationship we have with the Port Users Group. You've also seen the evolution of how critical that organization is and that relationship is to helping to keep there's a lot of communication between the port employees and management and the Port Users Group. We have monthly meetings. They haven't, I think they're in between transitioning leadership, but nonetheless the communication has continued, right? And so we're very grateful for that kind of partnership we have with all of the industry partners. And so we're protecting Port Strong employees through safety, training, and continuity. And we're upholding financial discipline and accountability to the public. On the next slide, we're modernizing the port. Modernizing the port is not optional. It is essential to Guam's stability and security, and then that the port will continue to deliver discipline, transparency, and reliability. And so we've taken on this posture of commerce, national security, and now energy dominance. And so this represents our presentation. We believe, based on everything that you've asked, other than the performance matrix and PPP, which we kind of talked about, but we could share with you what our cadence is for how we develop our budget process and how that's presented to the board. But as you know, we don't receive any funding from the legislature. I'm sure you're happy about that as well. You're chairman
We're extremely
of
happy about that,
appropriations,
yes.
But we submit this presentation where you're available to answer any questions you guys may have.
Thank you very much,
Senators.
Senator. And I'd like to also thank you, Senator Sean, for joining us this morning, and also Director Conchita Tecno, thank you for joining us this morning as well. I have a few questions that I'd just to ask, but congratulations again to the Port Authority of Guam, the men and women that work down there. And you know, most of us take it for granted. You know, we just go to the store and our food is there, and we get mad at the folks that man the store because it's not there, but it really comes in. And thank you guys for all that you do, most especially in challenging times, that we're able to feed our families and again supply the needs, our everyday needs, because everything almost 100% comes from Port Authority, but thank you very much for that. One of the committee members and the people of Guam to understand, again, the operation of the port a little more, and just look at just your performance snapshot. So can you give us the average vessel turnaround time that, you know, the Port Authority?
This is an area that we're most grateful for, and when Tony presented the weekly vessel productivity report, this is something that we all pay attention to week after week after week. We went from average 36 hours for a Matson operation down to 24 and a half hours is what the sweet spot is. One Mail Lines, I believe, early on went from 48 hours down to 12 hours, and you could see in that chart that we presented. And then you could see how high the productivity has been, and as Mr. Yatar stated, that how that's been sustained. It's been sustained over time.
Yeah, you know, other than again, you know, getting a waiver elimination of the Jones Act, okay.
Yeah.
You know, most places where ships will come in, they will leave as well. I mean, they come in loaded, they would leave as well with products from Guam, right? But most of the ships that leave here, they leave empty, right? So how can again, to be able to try to keep costs down, we don't manufacture, you know, things here.
We don't
Guam.
export.
So, yeah, we don't export.
Yeah.
So how do you foresee in the future to be able to try to keep some of their costs down, to be able to and then be able to, you know, have these ships go out, you know, with maybe even half a load that they brought in here. I mean, short of us manufacturing stuff here to be able to export.
Well, you see in part of our exercise to update our master plan, we believe that the port just cannot rely on throughput for our organic revenue. So there's about 600 acres of property that we're looking to see how we could diversify our revenue stream. Also make it so that the Department of War is the biggest customer to the Port Authority of Guam. And there's some initiatives that all of us are part of, the transshipment, adding value added, you know, manufacturing, warehousing.
Well, we've also,
you know,
also given,
and-
you know, I mean, you know, the 38th Guam Legislature given the Airport Authority as well the opportunity to go out and their land
Well, you didn't
leases
give that to us yet.
Maybe it's about time to start thinking about that as well, right? Yeah, I mean, you're performing pretty well here, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, you know, we need to have these things in place to be able to entice companies to come here, to be able to. manufacturer.
But we do recognize that the legislature has given the port up to 15 years.
Yeah.
And so the board has established a process to provide for leases up to 15 years and how to handle that through our legal counsel and through our commercial division.
What are your choke points over there? Your 3 choke points right now. Do you have at this point?
I think, Mr. Chairman, our choke point could be attributed to, and it's to no fault of the industry, but it's to the availability of truck drivers. And we're hearing in the private sector industry, those positions kind of just come and go, and we also know that they have to recruit H2 positions for those positions, and there was even an instance where they cannot get a TWIC card because I think if you come in as an H2, you're in a limited time frame, and if you get a TWIC card, I think you have to be employed for them, I think 3 years. So we did work something out with the port police and with these truck drivers, and so, you know, for us, right, if the manpower is there from the private sector and the issue is access to the yard, I mean, if they're a bona fide, legitimate H2 worker, they have to go through the State Department, U.S. Embassy, they have all the credentials to come to Guam. If it's just a matter of having them access the port, then we work through our own, through Port Police and through the Coast Guard and how we're going to be able to credential them to be able to have that truck access the cargo and bring it out to the, that could be a choke point right now, unless, Tony? In terms of vessel ops, I mean, it's very volatile, right? Every week we get through a new week, and if you look at the vessel productivity report and how simplified we presented, before it was so analytical, so much data, and so I've asked the team several years ago, just presented what was last week's vessel ops, what was this week's vessel ops, and to be fair, there's different variables, right? And even the berth time, as Tony pointed out, the vessel could stay longer in port because maybe they're waiting for a tug, or so it's not just involving operations. But for as long as we're not hearing from the different carriers on a case-by-case basis, day-to-day basis, then we just take it one operation at a time, and we treat every operation as if though it's a new operation, and
Okay.
but there's no major choke points, even in
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Your staffing. Okay. Again, your current staffing, your operations. Where are you at in your operations and your staffing?
Well, I think we're at. Of course, even if you look at our year-end review, there's some divisions that said they would like to have more staff. But at the same time, they're reporting they would like to have more staff. They report all the great accomplishments that were done for that year. And so we recognize all these accomplishments, and we say maybe where those divisions are where they need to be in terms of the staffing levels. And I've communicated this to the port users group that if we hire to their expectations, then at the end of the fiscal year, we're not going to have the finances to sustain these personnel. Mm-hmm. This is why we look at our weekly vessel productivity rate. We're hitting all our KPIs, and that's what we look at. We're also doing things, senators, that I think we're the only agency so far to do this. It was supported by our board. We created this out-of-position policy because for us, right, it's equal work for equal pay. And if you have a stevedore that's a AB chauffeur license and they operate a tractor, and you move that stevedore to be an equipment operator too, in the government's personnel policy, you can only compensate that person for 29 days of being in that position, and then you provide retroactive pay after 29 days. So what we've done at the port is we created this out-of-position policy where if I move someone from a stevedore, and it's strictly voluntary in their participation, if I move them from a stevedore to be an equipment operator, they would get the difference of that pay, or 5%, whichever is higher, for the first hour that they're operating that new job. So you look at a port employee and they have mad skills all around. You could see a stevedore that could be an automotive mechanic. You could see a equipment operator too that could be a crane operator. And so if a crane operator is, if an equipment operator too is operating a crane and they qualify to be a crane operator, why should they only be getting OJT credits? Why couldn't they get the compensation? And so they've been getting the compensation, and so that's how we're dealing with that. Then all of our positions, as much as possible, we've promoted in-house. We have capacity to promote from within. And then we don't underfill those positions where people move up. So if a 1 goes to a 2, 2 goes to a 3, we tell them, guess what? You're now a planner 2. You should do a planner 2 plus a planner 1 work. I know it doesn't sound fair, but they do it because they know that if we keep underfilling all of these positions, then it's going to be a strain on the finances. And so we've also revamped the desk audit process. And for the record, I don't believe I've ever said no to anyone asking for a desk audit, but I've revamped the desk audit and presented this new process to the board, which the board agreed that an employee can initiate a desk audit on their own. And oftentimes desk audits don't always result in an employee getting, if they're a planner 1, they believe they're doing the work of a planner 2. Sometimes they go through a desk audit and they sit down with the HR, the supervisors. It's probably revealed that they're not, in their mind, what they think they're doing is not what their position description provides. So this desk audit process does pre-screening so that they know early on if they qualify or not, because desk audits sometimes the result is that they recommend that they get downgraded as opposed to elevated. So we make the employees feel and believe that if they're performing a service that they should be compensated for, then they're going to be compensated for it.
Yeah. Now, I think because you talked about this and you want to talk about it later, but I guess this will fall under your discipline hiring, right? And promotions and things of that nature. Okay. Now, let me ask you, what is the area in the port that maybe is your greatest challenge to hire folks?
I think as you get more skilled, like I just announced a heavy mechanic, equipment mechanic 2, we announced for the position. We didn't get anyone submitted. But there are times when we would announce for example, 3 mechanics, and if we get 6 applicants, I would surprise our team when I say, okay, if you think all 6 are qualified, hire all 6. But wait a minute, we only announced for 3, but I'm sure there's work for 6. Because we know what the scarcity of the labor is out there, right? So if we have people that apply from wherever they came from, and when these people apply for jobs at the port, they also go through a practical. So what they say in their resume, what they say they can do, they have to match when they go through the interview process. They claim they're an electrician, they have to demonstrate that they have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to be able to perform that job, just like the heavy equipment diesel mechanic, and so they're put through the ringer, right? And then we've also revamped the hiring process where when individuals are rated, the names are redacted, so we don't know who these people are and when they get rated. And then the division head that is set to receive these hires has access to all the other applicant pool. And maybe they could see, like if we're hiring for port terminal workers, sometimes we look for who are those applicants that have extra skill sets like AB chauffeur's license, or maybe they can have mechanic certifications. So once we get them to apply, then we just like kind of keep looking for any opportunity that maybe they came in as a port terminal worker, but they found themselves as a welder 1. And that was an example of what just happened recently. And it's too bad for operations because they really needed that port terminal worker. But in the end, everybody was happy that this employee was able to be placed in where the port needed them overall. And also in terms of how we're filling positions, when we first came in 2019, we were presiding over a FY29 budget that we had nothing to do with. During that fiscal year, we learned that there was a $1.8 million budget shortfall because the migration was not funded. So we were able to absorb that $1.8 million shortfall without asking the $4.8 million to be increased, without doing anything extraordinary other than cutting our finances, being very fiscally disciplined. And then in the next fiscal year, we went through an exercise where when the budget was finally presented to me after going through all the division heads and the deputies and the CFO, and so they were so proud to say that I think the amount that they claimed to cut was maybe I'll just round it up, maybe upwards of $10 million. And I said, you think that's makes me happy to hear that was the cut? That shows that there's a disconnect between what their understanding of the resources are versus what they really need, right? And so now, I think in this last budget cycle, there very little was cut because every division head understands that there's a difference between a need and a want. And so in the FY 2020 budget, and then traditionally, right, if you have these FTEs per division, so if a division lost 5 people, they want 5 people replaced. And for me, how can you be innovative if you're just doing a 1-for-1? And so I said, okay, as a matter of exercise, why don't we add up all the FTEs and see how much it cost? So when we added everything up, it was a little over $5 million. And I think we only had about $2.4 million available from the budget based on the revenues that we projected. And so I asked the board at that time to create a vacancy pool. And you probably remember this with Speaker Ben in our time. The board said, what is a vacancy pool? Well, a vacancy pool is we need $5 million worth of personnel. You only have $2.4 million available. Give me $2.4 million and let us decide throughout the year what positions need to be funded. Because at the beginning of your fiscal year, when you identify these positions, it may not be the same throughout the fiscal year, right? So thankfully, we have a board that's extremely flexible in how we budget. And so they created the vacancy pool, put in $2.4 million. At that fiscal year, we only tapped about $200,000 from the $2.4 million. So even though the authorization is there, we just don't go and spend it. And so ever since then, that's how we've been creating our vacancies. Maybe a division lost 5 people, maybe they'll get 3 people. Or maybe they lost a 4, maybe a planner 4, maybe they'll get 2 planner 1s. So that gives an opportunity to really think about what kind of systemic changes need to be made. And so that's how we're dealing with that's how we recruit, that's how we fill positions. And gone are the days of the port where divisions are fighting to keep their budget. I keep saying, guys, it's one pot. It's port funds. It's not this division, that division. Don't worry, if there's a need, we'll figure it out. So there's no sense of territorial issues in terms of funding needs. Or if you take a look at what we're doing in terms of the facilities, we're going and renovating all the facilities. And if you look at what the operations offices look like, they look exactly the same as admin's offices. And so there's also parity across the board.
What's your overtime look like at this point?
So overtime, we're always going to have overtime because of vessel ops. Our overtime when we reported to the board, we were within budget, but historically, I think our overtime is at least over $1 million a year.
I'm sorry,
At least over $1 million a year. But Mr. Chairman, this overtime is generally tied to vessel ops. So there's a revenue portion toward that. Yeah. Okay. And also the direct labor. I always monitor our overtimes in terms of the direct labor, and direct labor is those special service requests where you need to bring people in to move to devanning, to do special services, to maybe open the gate a little bit longer. And
Yeah, can you just walk us through again the end-to-end cargo clearance process with CQA? And where do the handoffs break down, if there's any at this point? And what is it we can do to have the joint improvement plan between yourselves and CQA and or maybe the private entities, right?
So we would do and continue to do everything to support customs in their mandate to inspect containers. From the very beginning, and you know, they're a tenant at the port and they're not paying anything, but that's just the arrangement that we have. But from the very beginning, we've moved customs from an area at the port to another area within the admin building. Then we moved them over to another Horizon building. The director of customs is trying to find funding to repair some of the the spalling in that building. But this
They got 11.4 million laps.
yeah, I was watching that oversight hearing and yeah. But we do have a very good working relationship with customs. In fact, Mr. Chairman, when they did a very targeted operation for 6 weeks on these inspection of containers, we had a meeting at the office and I said, well, you didn't find any contraband, you didn't find any drugs. Go tell the people of Guam that you didn't find anything. And that's what they're starting to articulate, right? Is that they're not finding drugs at the port, but it doesn't say that we stop being vigilant. Doesn't say that we stop providing the wherewithal to be able for them to do their job.
Yeah. I think what it is at this point, and from the results or from reports that are coming in, that supposedly or some speculation that drugs are coming in are being unloaded outside, thrown into, I guess, water and boats or some kind of something.
But you
like
know,
that. Yeah.
I mean, I suffered through a 4-hour-long oversight hearing where the allegations were that the drugs are coming to the port, facilitated by the port. And that's what we all have to do a better job at, is to making sure that that's not the messaging. Because as I shared this publicly, the biggest detriment to the supply chain is if you demoralize the very employees that are pushing all this cargo out. And there's been no evidence of port employees being involved. There's been no evidence of us obstructing any investigation or preventing customs from doing their job. All we're doing is supporting what customs is supposed to be doing, to include their cargo inspection facility. When we got the grant for our master plan, it was our consultants and our planning team and Dominic here who worked with customs to figure out what that cargo inspection facility ought to look like. Remember, when we came in the transition report, we committed that within 30 days we would identify location of where that cargo inspection facility should be. There was some thought from customs that it should be right there in the terminal yard. Past management thought it should be across GPA. Our position, it should be still within a sterile environment, so we chose that area next to the weight transfer station. And so within 30 days, we identified that area, and that's 4 acres that's still prime property of the port, right? But it's something that we have to commit to doing. And so we have identified the location, worked to get land management to, and so customs, they were able to use that feasibility study to go and secure the money they need for the A&E.
Well, I want to thank, of course, Lujan for his bill that extended that out.
Yeah.
And again, we're working closely to try to get that facility built as soon as possible. And we understand that their mobile inspection vehicle, I think, is down. And, we can't afford that to happen.
Well, we've offered, Mr. Chairman, to help with the procurement of whatever they need to get. So that mobile vehicle originally was a port grant, a port security grant that was given to customs. And then when we came in early on, it was down for about 12 weeks. Then we assisted them through our procurement processes to get that thing up and running.
Let me ask you, in any of your procurement measures and on all that, are any of them stuck anywhere? And what you're trying to procure at this point?
I think our biggest procurement that we're trying to push out is the crane procurement, only because one, well, how do we resolve the funding? We're waiting on that merit grant. And then two, how do we reconcile which we have done through legal, the Coast Guard's involvement and with the executive branch's executive orders that gives the Coast Guard more authority over what kind of equipment is used at the port, both hardware, software, and
Okay, so it's not a procurement stagnation at this point, right?
no, but generally we have two lawyers. We have a former judge, and we also have
Judge Canto back, yeah.
and we also have Attorney Jessica Toff, who
Okay.
is really helping guide our procurement processes.
Okay. What your stakeholder complaints? What are the biggest complaints you have by your stakeholders down there?
I think that we give them too much. I hear Faye.
And Director Faye Wallace, thank you for being with us
I
this
would
morning.
say that they get, well, I mean, I tell you though, one thing I appreciate about the Port Users Group is it's by the very nature, it's very competitive, right? But imagine for at least 1 hour a month, they set aside their own competitive edge. You have carriers, and all they think about is what can we do to advance the best interest of the port, and that's the cadence, that's the edict, that's the drive. It's what can we do that's in the best interest of the port, and we're kind of going through a little bit of a bump right now with our tariff adjustment and what that's going to look like through the Public Utilities Commission. But I think with the Port Users Group, we've been very honest and open about what our challenges are, what our operational challenges are. And they've been with us every step of the way during Mawar, during COVID. Mawar especially, you saw a tremendous amount of cooperation with the industry. We couldn't say the same for other industries, but in terms of how the port was able to push stuff out still, despite the damages we sustained. And
Can you walk us through this? Your tariff schedule basically, and the proposal to raise it, and then was withdrawn.
So it wasn't withdrawn.
Okay.
And the governor never asked us to withdraw it. The governor wrote to the PUC asking that it be held in abeyance. And so we presented our tariff adjustment petition to the PUC. Our position has been that those labor charge-out rates hasn't been updated since 2020. And it hasn't been updated since 2020 because you saw that in 2 fiscal years following that, when the port received the $15 million ARP from the governor, it was with the commitment that we weren't going to do anything with our tariffs. And we didn't want to go for an overall tariff adjustment because we don't know yet what we have to raise in terms of capital asset purchases for cranes, for wharf rehabilitation, or whatever the needs are. The port received a overall tariff increase in 2017. It was 7.5%, then 7%, then 1%, 1%. In 2020 was the last 1%. So there was no tariff adjustment since 2020. 2021, 2022, up to now 2026, there was no tariff adjustment since then. But since then, the labor rates from 2020 are the same. And so there's no mechanism to have like an annual escalation clause. So when we were meeting with our consultants, I asked, why wasn't there an annual escalation clause? And they said, well, it was never brought up. So in this tariff adjustment, not only are we trying to raise the 2020 rate to 2025, and I think this is where we're being truthful in what that difference is from. If you take all the positions that are charged against vessel ops, the aggregate of it is about 17%. But the impact of it is not 17%, it's about 1/10 of a penny. So for every canned good, it's 1/10 of a penny. We quantified it. For every container, it's about average $60 because we gave the carrier, this is what your bill is today. If the tariff adjustment goes through, this is what your bill would look like, so they could see transparently what the impact would be like. And so when the board passed the resolution to the PUC authorizing us to go for this tariff adjustment, we also asked the PUCs to think about an annual escalation clause, maybe tied to the CPI. The PUC's consultant came back, I think it was a 89-page report, came back and said that they recommend a 4% or the CPI, whichever's higher. And in discussions with the Port Users Group, John Selleck said, and someone from Port Users Group said, if it, instead of 4% of the CPI, whichever is higher, could it be 4% of the CPI, whichever is lower? I said, yeah, we could take that, right? As long as there's a way annually, because if we don't have that annual escalation clause, no one is ever going to want to go back to the PUC to have all this tariff adjustment for, imagine all the anxiety, right? For the this kind of a impact, right? It's not even it's not a new tariff. It's not a. And so when we attended, the CFO and I attended the last PUC meeting. They asked if we had any plans to ask our board if we're going to amend, if the board is going to amend the petition. So my response was that the port, and by the way, this entire tariff adjustment packet is all driven in-house. We're very proud to say there's no consultants behind this. It was our finance team and us. I said, I believe that we did everything we can to present our case. The board has done everything possible to present the case. The matter is now before the PUC, but the board chair and I have gone on the record saying that we're not opposed to having a date of implementation of January 2027.
Oh, so it's set aside until January 2027?
They haven't made a decision yet,
decision.
Mr. Chairman. It's the PUC who would make the decision.
Okay. Yeah, no, because I mean, you know, it's kind of confusing. In one hand, the governor's asked the PUC to set that aside, yet, you know, by law, the 2026 budget calls for a reduction from the BPT from 4.5 to 4.0, and then the budget sent down to us actually kind of repeals that and brings it back, keeps it at 4.5. So on one hand is not to increase it, the others do not decrease it. So when we're asking the people of Guam to reduce the BPT, like, no, let's keep it at 4.5.
Oh, I see what you're doing here, but you're talking about tax policy versus a tariff.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
but you know, for the pocketbook issue, it's the same thing, you know.
But the only thing I was asking is anyone that would take a position on the tariff adjustment, including the Chamber of Commerce and others, to be just very factual, to just come out and say, oh, 17%, 17%, 17%, without saying what the true impact would be. Even PUC's consultants quantified that our analysis is correct, that the true impact would be 1/10 of a penny for every canned good, or about $60 per container. But and we have been going down this road for over a year with this tariff adjustment petition. So this is not something that we just thought of something overnight. And
understand. Thank you, Senator.
Susmasi, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator. Welcome back to your house as well, and thank you for the presentation and your entire management team. Thank you to the Port family that's here, as well as Conchita Taitano and Ms. Feovalas from the board. You know, for me, I would look at this as a performance-based budget presentation, just simply because it measures all the matrix. And so, you know, we mentioned to others that we're talking to about it, that even, you know, the fire department earlier, a few weeks ago, basically did the same thing. They measured everything based on national standards. And so I thank you for the presentation and your team for the very thoroughness of the issue. just to our chairman is very thorough, so I only have a few questions on top of what he's asked. But I think just to address the tariff issue, I think the biggest thing is what you've presented today is an operationally sound port, fiscally and operationally. I think what most people are continuing to ask whenever we're talking about costs and costs of government is, what are the deliverables and what is it matched to? And so I think that's really where we'll continue to work with you, Senator, and I'm sure the PUC is going to evaluate that as well. Of course, you talk about the cost impact in the presentation. Is it tied to additional CIPs? Is it tied to other things? As you mentioned earlier, and I look forward to our tour, for even some of the naysayers in our body, we're going to measure the performance of a bill we passed that was very controversial, but I think it's going to show that without, like you said, without having the stranglehold of procurement and some of the other issues, having an agreement has led to the ability to fast-track modernization and to get that kind of work done. And so you have offsets for that, which is kind of the same thing. You have a deliverable. You have, a container yard or a build-out yard. You have, a road going forward. I'm going to ask you a little bit about Hotel Wharf and the like. Those are all deliverables that can be measured and measured against the offset of those who complain that this would affect your revenue. However, I think probably even procurement holdups would have hit your revenue just in the matter of fact of how things are cost escalation and what all of that build out would have costed. I mean, I went a long way to say I think that's really where we are in terms of when we're talking about policy. The issue is the people are asking us because they're the payers is, what am I getting for it, right? And so I think as long as we continue down that road, we'll be in good shape. I'm happy that you're going to take advantage of the 15-year that's at least in place now. I think you're probably going to get a lot of possible offers going forward in the future, just because at that 15-year, anybody that wants to invest in, improving that property and create revenue for the port will possibly see that as an initial opportunity and then maybe make proposals to try to secure additional years beyond that. And that's where we're at least now at a starting point where before, 5 years was a non-starter. So I think you have answered that in terms of your ability to try to build out and augment revenue that could possibly push off tariffs by making sure that you're generating revenue internally. Going to just a few of my questions, Rory, the thing is that I think that we've been hearing this discussion about the cranes for such a long period of time now, and I think the overriding question that I have is, you've presented that you have a strong maintenance schedule and things going forward. In your honest assessment right now and with your team, what are we talking about in terms of lifespan with what you have right now?
Well, if we were to go with the PUC's assessment when those cranes were purchased, I think the lifespan of the cranes was like 2028, 2030, and 2032, their actual lifespan. But as you know, our team has been very skillful in maintaining the service life of these cranes. I'll admit, though, that every year it's getting very challenging to have OSHA certify these cranes because they are 42 years old. But between corrosion control, preventive maintenance, I know some of those cranes are practically rebuilt, right, with new generator houses. And I mean, I can let Shine speak to that. I mean, time is of the essence, I could tell you. Yeah.
So the cranes are 42 years old. We did start implementing a weekly lockout plan for the cranes, which is probably what hurts the birth time for some of these ships coming in. But with the corrosion that is happening on these assets, I want to say Guam is actually on the highest level of the corrosion scale. So it gets a little hard. Sometimes we have to let it go because operation needs it to get those vessels out. But we're working it. It should last the span that it's supposed to last. We need to be able to make these cranes work to get these containers off, but it is a challenge. Our guys are working it. But we got schedules in place for it. We're actually tracking it piece by piece, and our guys are killing it out there.
I want to add though that the governor and the board are aware and very supportive that this has to be the year, maybe this quarter, where a decision has to be made, whether it's going to be finance through maybe a tariff adjustment or a public-private partnership, which would require some kind of revenue, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Like if MARAD doesn't approve, and then the governor's going down this economic adjustment committee path, and every time we have meetings with JRM, Indo-PACOM, even the Pentagon, I mean, they're well aware that if one crane goes down, it's going to set back the whole military readiness program by about 4 years. So that's a performance-based budgeting matrix right there, right? So
Yeah.
but I want to say that if the funding is there, some way somehow, we don't start developing the scope of work. I mean, all of those things have been spec'd out already. So while we're waiting for the funding, pursuing aggressively what kind of funding resources are available, we have already been working on the scope of work, the specs, even for the tie-down plan, the sequencing. I mean, you're welcome to look at all the information that's been generated. We're ready to go to procurement. It's just we're not task waiting. I think you could say that with us, we're never going to be accused or criticized of task waiting. We're not waiting for the money. We get the money, then we do the bid specs. I mean, we're doing everything in parallel. And I think that by March we may have to come down here to figure out some kind of legislation. But in the meantime, this very timely. Thank you also. We've been working with Bank of America. The governor had some GITA and bond advisors. There's a possibility of the port being able to borrow $100 million to provide those matching grant requirements if we get the MARAD grant and other grants. So we will be coming down to this body to get some bond authorization in order to move forward in those capital purchases.
Yeah, just, obviously, I think the tone that I'm seeing, and obviously we're, in a season where it's going to be more emphasized, but the tone that I'm hearing more than anything else is how can we shake the tree more in Washington? And I just want to make sure you've mentioned it in what you've said. I mean, if we got to shake that tree harder, let's shake it harder. I mean, if it's a legislative resolution, substantive, where we can get you back down here. I'm just curious, is it the Build America, Build USA, Buy USA? Is that the only stumbling block that we're trying to get over in terms of, yeah?
Well, according to MARAD, so we didn't make it to first base because of the Buy American requirement, and they don't manufacture gantry cranes in the United States.
Right.
So just recently, as I said, they've waived that requirement for the Pacific ports, and so we're just kind of waiting.
So the holdup is just the award, basically, or the decision on the grant.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I think, and I'll tell you, for me, I agree on we can't wait.
Yeah.
I think that set a timeline for the decision, because I think shaking the tree also may be taking action. And the bottom line is that we're going to have to press. We have a full. And I want to see a full court press. If we can be unified on one thing between our branches of government, it has to be that Guam needs more help in these areas where it's deliverables. I mean, we can talk about how, people speculate on a handout to Washington and the like, and I understand that argument. But I don't align with that argument when it comes to things that actually impact us. And the very viability of our, I made this argument on the floor, Senator, when I was being criticized about the issue of helping Black because of the criticalness of the breakwater. Understanding that if that breakwater is breached, we're finished. And so the bottom line is that I think this is the same level of conversation simply because it has to move. And if it has to move via a legislative resolution, substantive, putting that argument forward, and then, letting Washington know if we have to move without you, we're still going to knock on your door. Because we believe that this is something that you should partner with us on, and whatever needs to push MARAD moving forward, and also in terms of just, we And Jojo, I see it in your throughputs. I mean, yes, certainly it's revenue to the port, but a lot of that MilCon support and construction support and everything else also, adds to also the strain. Although it's revenue, we're doing everything we can to keep our cranes moving, to move that stuff while also moving our viability and survivability here. So I just ask that whatever we can do, I would like to see more noise on this, and we're ready to help when it comes to that. That's a few notes. Another thing is, you mentioned the port users group, and I think you've covered that pretty well, but I just wanted to get another representation from you that while of course their asks will be consistent, that the relationship is strong, it's good, and that there's unity in terms of the way that operations are moving.
Yeah, absolutely. We couldn't function without them, and they couldn't function without us. So we're joined at the hip.
Yeah, once again, I remember several of their members coming down and actually supporting the move for the agreement that was made for having the offsets with Black Construction and the current. So there have been some questions recently, and I just wanted you to address this. I wasn't part of the presentation, but issues with Hotel Wharf that have arisen recently in terms of fitness, readiness, usage, and the like. Can you address that, Senator?
So, we're addressing that directly with the Coast Guard. Apparently, we have to amend our facility security plan to include. So, Hotel Wharf, I think 22 years ago, was a permitted facility, and so we just have to upgrade that our facility security plan to make sure that that's properly permitted by the Coast Guard. Black Construction did have a vessel ops there. The Coast Guard identified that that wasn't a permittable activity. We took responsibility for that. You've probably following the comments I made in the paper. There was no cease and desist order, but it was just something that the Coast Guard said that, hey, this is something that needs to be looked at, and so since then, we're working. Port Police's responsibility over the facility security plan. It was easier for us to, instead of letting Black do this on their own, we didn't want them to do this on their own. It was easier for us to take our facility security plan, amend it to include Hotel Wharf, just during those days when they have the specialized operation, and then take our certificate of adequacy and also include Hotel Wharf in that. That would be a big help to Black Construction. Our goal is to have the Coast Guard permit those vessel operations by March, because that's when their next, when Black's next activity is. But by all account, the captain of the port is very supportive, as well as the Coast Guard, and I think we're on track to having a resolution where you could see those kinds of activities now.
So by your representation, it hasn't really snarled or snagged any of your operational capabilities?
No, and the only operations at HWARF will be specific to Black Construction's work at the Glass Breakwater project. But there's been no activity from now until then, and Black Construction's next activity is in March, but by all account, they should get the proper permitting to be able to allow for that vessel discharge. Yeah.
Not to preempt my colleague's question, but I just wanted to reiterate. And thank you for taking us through the
I think,
customs.
Senator, if I permission to be sure. To speak freely, I always want to speak freely. Is I think because it was an operation tied to a military construction project, that it was Black needed to be told that you cannot do that unless there was a proper permitting and regulations were in place, and so
sure.
And they're a new tenant, so it's understandable, and the Coast Guard was very forgiving.
No, definitely, yeah. And I mean, it beats the alternative, because I think there would have been a lot, from what I understand, barging and everything else that would have been going on. There probably would have been a bigger headache in terms of what was needed for movement and the like. And I have a friend who's actually part of the whole precast of the jacks and everything else. So I get daily updates when I go and see him once in a while.
And so he's explained the waterfront is just as heavily regulated as the airport's tarmac.
Correct.
And that's what people have to understand.
Sure.
And that's regulated by the Coast Guard.
Yeah, like I said, not to preempt a question that's probably already on my colleague, Sean Gumatato, Senator Gumatato's list, but I thank you for your presentation and once again understanding that the inspection, the future inspection, area in terms of modernization and the X-ray and everything else that will help us all in terms of whether we're looking at illicit drugs or just understanding what containers contain versus what's on a bill of lading or the like. So just once again, that site control is fully vetted, and that customs, when they're ready to execute and everything's in place, it can move forward.
Correct.
Thank you. Senator Gumatato, you're recognized at this time. Once again, I just want to thank you and your team for all you're doing, and once again for a very thorough presentation. For me, I like to focus on certain items, and I think we need to just be a bulldog on this issue of the cranes, because we need, and I'm glad that you've set timelines to make sure that you're not going to go past that, and then we're going to have to go to Plan B.
And thank you, Senator, for your trust.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator. Welcome back, and thank you to the entire Port family for being with us this morning. I just want to start, if I can, on the workforce slide. And I know you showed the number of the workforce stability for FY 2019 to today, and I noticed that on the maintenance side, it's only 5 employees off, and operations is just a tick higher. When you look later in your presentation about your engagement with federal or interagency partners, I do not see Department of Labor. I'm not saying that the workforce is one of the youngest and scrappiest, or oldest and scrappiest, if you will, but in terms of planning for replacements, either for some of these specialty types of skill sets, is there any plan to work with, I know you're trying not to surge, you're being disciplined, but is there any plan to engage Department of Labor to perhaps create apprenticeship programs to be able to support your respective workforce, especially in the technical areas? I mean, you guys just bought a lot of equipment. How do you drive that forklift? How do you plan if the guy's sick tomorrow, or maybe he retires tomorrow?
No, yes, as a matter of fact, we're working with the Port Users Group to create this apprenticeship program to figure out a labor pool, not just for the port or specific companies, but for the industry. So we can have like a shared labor pool, and then we also got authorization from the board to do a temporary labor services. So when we have the surge from all the military cargo that needs to be discharged, we can't hire employees and bring them in permanent. We're going to have a temporary labor pool. So it's going to be seasonal, and so we're preparing for that. But in terms of our workforce, I think we always regularly take a look at what the needs are. We have an open invitation to any port employee that if they feel that they're better suited in another division, then let's have the conversation. And so we move employees around based on what they believe they can contribute based on their qualifications, their certifications, and where they believe they're best fit, right? A happy employee is happy for everybody else.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to start with that. I think that it was kind of what you mentioned earlier. I'm hoping you can talk to some of your fellow cabinet members to push on other things so that, in fact, we can get a lot of things done. No, listen, it's a tribute to the port to be able to just go and do it versus like, let me think about that a minute. And I guess what I mean by push, meaning just go do it.
Well, I think you know me, I've never been risk averse. That's probably why I get in trouble sometimes.
No, you don't get in trouble, man. I think you guys have it correct.
We're doing something right.
No, Senator, with all due respect, you have it correct. I'm not, it's not a criticism. I'm hoping that you will rub off on other people, which probably would get me to my next question.
How many more targets do you want on my back?
No. I'm not adding anymore. Let me just jump into my next question, which is.
And no, Senator Gumatato, we can't switch agencies.
Oh, no, I'm not asking. The next to my next question is, the Department of Administration, they issued memorandum HRD number 25-068 on April 4th, 2025. They were requesting information from Guam Customs and quarantine and other public safety and law enforcement agencies relative to DOA's review of officer compensation, benefits, position requirements, and duties. Recognizing that the Port Authority of Guam handles its own personnel matters, to what extent is the Port's Police Division involved in discussions with the Peace Officers Standards and Training Commission regarding a broader public safety and law enforcement job recruit requirements, compensation, and benefits review to include the pending force structure plan?
We're separate from the government pay plan, but we're not to say that we're not involved in post. Our assistant chief is, I think, the vice chair of the post commission. So Rosanna Castro-Stone, she's very involved in that with our Port Police Chief Jesse Mendiola and the other assistant chief Victor. And so, I mean, the standards are there, but in terms of the pay plan, the port's on its own pay plan.
Right, and maybe that's probably a perfect question for the board, but the idea is, as they're doing this to modernize our public safety agencies and their compensation, I mean, I'm not saying, no offense to our friends of the Port Police, but when we think about their compensation, I'm just hoping that the board will see that as the process is moving forward, that you're listening and you're perhaps hoping to recognize their effort. I'm not asking for the full 25. I'm not doing that, because I think Guam Police Department has a big role in this too. So they're kind of the premier police department, right? But it's to make sure that that effort, you guys recognize it and can ensure that you can compensate them appropriately. That's all I'm asking. Okay, good, no comment. So with that said, let me move on probably to my biggest one is, and again, goes back to from the records, based on records from March 2021 regarding the much needed satellite customs inspection facility in PD. There was that draft feasibility study that was developed at the time and used as that framework to seek federal grants through the Guam State Clearinghouse and the Bureau of Stats and Plans for the design and construction of the inspection facility. I know that process is, I hope it's moving ahead. I haven't had a chance, we'll have to ask Customs again on the record of how is it. I understand there is some kind of RFP, but what information is available that summarizes the Port Authority of Guam's ongoing collaboration with them, with GITA and other entities in identifying funding to support the proposed satellite inspection facility in PD? You have been absolutely generous. I mean, and that's probably an understatement. We need to move ahead with them and help them, but if you can, any thoughts on your collaboration with them to move forward?
I mean, whatever help they need with the feasibility study, I think we can look into that with our planning division. But I'll tell you, it was that feasibility study where I believe Congressman Moylan was able to secure $2 million for the A&E, and you know, on that, and I think that kind of that's something that Customs doesn't talk about enough, is how they got to where they're at, right? It's that 4 acres of prime port property, which we're still within that sterile environment. It's the coordination with the port. It's the using some of our grant money for our master plan to kind of talk about their vision of the container inspection facility and how that, and the reason why we did it, Senator, is because we have an interest in making sure that that process doesn't bottleneck the discharge of cargo, but also doesn't take away from any opportunity for additional screening of contraband, drugs, whatever necessary, right?
Right, and so that's what I'm hoping you guys will, after this conversation, because you said they talk about it, but I think it's, talking's great, but I think it's important that, you know, it's your facility that you guys are trying to help them with. I'm hoping they'll.
But it would be their facility, though.
Oh, I know that, but I'm hoping that they'll get some. You're ready to help them. And you said it. They talk enough about it. It's, can we get the director or team, if they haven't done the RFP yet, do it, work with you so that, you know, I was just talking to the congressman as well. I said we can. There's no way that we can grant ourselves into in all these programs at the port.
And
it needs to be a straight appropriation and be done with it, so that it can show some level of for the port users who are also stakeholders, for the management and the team at the Port Authority. It just can't be we just keep spinning our wheels, not you, I'm talking about the other guys, but if they can perhaps just get off and let's just do it.
And Customs has a really good plan, a viable financial plan to house other federal agencies in that building and have them pay rent for the space that they're going to be in that building. So it
Right,
could
no,
be,
that's what I'm saying.
yeah, revenue sustaining.
I'm excited. I like
Yeah.
the plan, but I think
Yeah.
execute is probably, I mean, it's got to be in the lexicon sometimes.
I think that's been the reason why people think that the port's also inspecting containers. And so we get caught
Right.
up in this.
And it goes back to, we extended 2 years, so
Yeah.
we just passed that, they just signed into law, so every day that we're not in play, and I had a pretty urgent conversation with the congressman, which has started with him, by the way, and I said, can you just help these guys, help the port, help all of us, and push ahead?
But I will say, though, that early on in 2019, and then when you look at all these listings of broken seals, even to Customs Zone testimony, they started gathering this in 2019 is because we developed a process through our operations that as soon as the container comes off the ship, you have a cargo checker there. If they see that there's a broken seal or no seal, they radio the high tower, the operations is suspended. Port police is called to take custody of that container, and then they dray it to an area, and then Port police will stay with that container until Customs takes custody of it. And then when Port police secures that container with Customs, then operations resume. So we don't just say, oh, no seal, broken seal, next container. So we're doing our part, whatever necessary to support Customs and its responsibilities to.
Yes,
but we never said it's not our responsibility. We've never said we're not going to do this. We said we'll do whatever possible without getting in trouble ourselves, because the only two entities authorized to open up a container are Customs and the Coast Guard.
Yeah, and thank you again, Senator, for your input. And Mr. Chair, I know this is an oversight hearing on them. I wasn't trying to confuse the issue.
By the way,
with Guam
why
Customs.
did you name it oversight hearing? It's
Well, I'm just saying that I just think, Mr. Chair, as we had both been witness, it's just trying to, we know that those guys need help. And if we can get, I mean, at least the help of the port, they've never not said no. So it's just the nudge, that's all.
Yeah, and actually that's a good thing you brought it up, because I think not necessarily maybe an oversight, but maybe a round table with Customs and the Port Authority, I think will go a long way again to get us to the place that we're supposed to be.
Yes, no, for sure. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time. I appreciate the time, and thanks again to the port for all that you guys do for all of us. Thank you.
One more thing. What's going on with the over the Harbor Refuge area? Is any improvements, or what's going on?
yeah, yes. Yeah.
I know you used to have quite a few businesses run out of there, but since the downturn.
I was just going to mention, yes, the port was awarded again a subrecipient to Department of Agriculture, and this is for pre-construction of a gangway and courtesy dock there at the Guam Harbor Refuge.
Okay, and it's still, I mean, you know, I guess it's still Harbor Refuge during like typhoons, right? I mean, yeah, it's still being used and all that for. Okay, got it. Anything else? Senator Gumatao, nothing else? Okay. And colleagues, and of course, the Port Authority team. I want to also recognize, of course, your deputy, of course, Dominic. Thank you for being here and all that. One more time, can you reiterate again? So, because Senator Gumatao wasn't here when you were talking about the dollar-for-dollar offset and what has happened since then. Because I want to take the committee on a field trip down there.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we said for the record, thank you for sponsoring that legislation that provided.
Yeah, you know we got a lot of flack for that, right?
The dollar-for-dollar lease credit offset, so we didn't have to discount our statutory lease rate. That was a big victory for us. So the board approved credits based on that $10.5 million lease. And in the last 8 months, they built, I believe, a 10,000 square foot office facility. There's another 8,800. There's a couple annexes with office space. They provided, I think, about $2.4 million worth of work at Hotel Wharf. and the work is ongoing. We saw the design for the road going into Family Beach to include, we've asked them to provide, based on the offsets, of shower and bathroom facility for the people who enjoy Family Beach. And you've talked about the opportunities it will create when cruise ships come to Guam. You can trolley them in, because the biggest problem with having a 5,000 passenger vessel is there's not enough buses on the island to. But if you trolley them to Family Beach and they can have an excursion tour with jet skiing and GVB, we spoke to them about having food trucks and having the visitor hospitality experience there. You could do it now with the paved road and bathroom, shower facility, and it's also a big victory for our residents. First time ever, just like at the Agate Marina, first time ever with the bathroom. So in addition to all the work that we're seeing at the Cabras Island, we've used about $100,000 of that dollar-for-dollar offset to improve the lighting at the Gregora de Perez Marina. And also there's plans being submitted for the Agate Marina. And you're gonna see solar lighting all the way into Family Beach. So theoretically, you can ride your bike, walk or jog from the beginning of Route 11 all the way into Family Beach when everything is done.
Okay, yeah, and I'll work with the committee members and offices of the senator's offices again to arrange for.
And by the way, so that's after 4 years. We're trying to ask Black Construction to extend up to 15 years, right? Because it's to their benefit that they stay, and they're tied into the SMAC project. They're going after other projects, but the idea there too is that that area where they're at, that's the area where we've identified as the recycling enterprise zone, or for the abandoned vehicle program, and because you have to see it, they've laid down concrete casting yard, and once they're done with that space, it's ripe for a private sector recycler to come in. It's already built, and they can operate and do abandoned vehicle projects.
Public-private partnership works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. Again, as we close today's oversight hearing, I want to be clear about, of course, what was done here today. On the record, efforts to put facts, of course, timelines, and accountability where it belongs, at the core, of course, of the agency that affects every family and every business on this island. You discuss, of course, operations, your delivery of service, the condition and critical equipment, and the bottlenecks that drive delays and higher costs. Of course, discuss also the port's financial picture and the discipline needed to manage payables, procurement, and obligations. We discuss capital modernization, of course, because Guam cannot afford to treat the port infrastructure as optional. We discuss stakeholder impacts, of course, because when the system is inefficient, consumers pay. Federal and interagency coordination, of course, was discussed because cargo and compliance do not happen in silos. Most importantly, discuss the performance metrics and readiness for performance-based budgeting, of course, headed by our Finance and Budget Chair, and we'll be going into that. And of course, oversight hearings that are happening now are going to be focused on performance-based budgeting. If we are going to invest public dollars, the public deserves to see clear outcomes, better throughput, more reliable equipment, safer operations, stronger financial controls, and visible progress on modernization. To the Port Authority team, thank you again for being here and for putting information on the record. And we expect follow-through, of course, and we stand ready to work with each and every one of you to remove barriers that ensure the port delivers the results our community needs. So again, thank you again. Please relate our gratefulness to the men and women of the Port Authority and, of course, the Port Users Group, again, for providing us with our daily needs, and thank you. And you line up for the cloning after this oversight hearing. But this oversight hearing on the Port Authority of Guam is now adjourned. It is now 11:04. Thank you very much. And committee members, thank you very much. Thank you.